Hey everyone, and welcome to English 288. I'm Courtney Fowler, your instructor, and this is our week 1 lecture. Let's talk about plot. Before you begin the lecture, make sure to have read the short story Samuel by Grace Paley. You can find it in your textbook. We'll be using this very short story to make points about our lecture topics. So, what is a short story? What do I need to know before I get started? We're going to look at the theory of the single effect by Edgar Allan Poe. He's the first theorist of the short story, and he said the most characteristic feature of the short story is to produce a singular effect. And by that he meant something almost physical, like you can feel it in your body. You've probably had this happen to you when you watch a movie. Something starts to get tense, and you can feel your stomach churn, and you're like, don't go in that door. That's a physical effect that Edgar Allan Poe would say is a great aim for the short story to hit. He also said that every word in the story should be in service to that effect. When we read short stories this semester, be looking out for the effect the stories have on your physical experience. Do they make you cringe? Do they make you tense up? Do they give you feelings of elation or joy? Those are carefully crafted physical sensations from the author to you. Now, how can you craft those careful, sensation-causing stories? The first aspect of the short story that we'll look at in detail is plot. Now, plot's not the most important thing in a story, but it's definitely the thing that helps us remember what the story is about. It tells us what happens, and then what happens, and then what happens, and it generally provides a vehicle for us to feel those sensations. You've probably seen this plot chart before, maybe in a high school English class. Let's call it Plot Mountain. As you can see, Plot Mountain has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. But don't forget those sides of the mountain, the rising action and the falling action. Those are really important aspects of the physical experience of the story. If we look at Grace Paley's Samuel, we can chart how the story climbs Plot Mountain. In the beginning, we have 4 young boys fooling around on a train platform. Things are okay, but they are tense. Why are they tense? And that's because of the rising action. We've got these 2 opposing forces. We have the people watching, and we have the boys fooling around. And those 2 people have very different sets of needs. The boys have a need for excitement and fun, and the people watching have a need for them to stop fooling around and relax. They have a need for peace. They have a need for just a quiet ride home. The rising action in this scene is a woman tells them that they're going to get hurt, and then a man gets angry and pulls the emergency cord. The climax of the story is, of course, the train lurching forward and the boy falling off the platform only to be crushed by the train. It's a horrifying moment. Once we have the dramatic sort of climax of the story happen, the following action is that we move away from this scene to the mother of the dead boy as she grieves. The following action, though, is more than just her grief. She also becomes hopeful once she's pregnant again that she's going to have some relief from this grief. The resolution is, however, that once the baby boy is born, she realizes there'll never be another boy in the world like the one she lost. Plot usually involves a conflict of opposing forces. Reading like a writer will help you identify and track the needs of those opposing forces. In this week's reading, try to identify the opposing forces at work in the plots of the stories. Once you identify the conflict, you'll be able to track the rising tension in the story. Tension is what helps plots move toward the end. As the characters in Samuel grew more tense, so too does the reader. I've read the story many times, and I still find myself hoping the boys will just move to another subway car, or that the man who pulls the emergency cord just takes a deep breath and resists pulling this time. Zeroing in on what makes a plot move along in time will help you to crystallize this idea in your own work. In real life, we work to alleviate tension. In fiction, we work to build it. Foreshadowing and dramatic irony don't appear on the plot mountain, but they often play an important part in cluing the reader into events of the story. Paley's titling the story, Samuel, gives the reader a heads up that he's a character to pay attention to. Even while the boys are not given much distinction in the opening scene, they're just described as 4 boys. This is an act of foreshadowing, a communication between the reader and the author about expectations for the story. The action
created using Powtoon.